graduation at 6 anyway.
This is Westland graduation.
Elementary, Baskerville.
That's major too. My daughter just graduated.
Yeah, so we're gonna go and make it do what it do. Boston come back the other day.
So what?
Watch game 7 the other day.
I watched the last 6, 7 minutes.
I think Denver's gonna win it. I won't watch it, but I think they're gonna win it.
And when I say must be in before drink dinner, you have to understand, that's not me, that's not me saying that, it's the state of North Carolina saying that.
Have you seen the movie Air?
I did, I watched halfway. I watched half of it. It's pretty good though.
Hey now.
I always heard Mrs. Jordan was brains behind that
That's part
family.
of our
Yeah.
And yeah, the movie really was
There's some closeout
focused on
meeting we
her.
go through
Yeah.
this year.
That's why Jordan gave them the approval to do it. That's the same, I don't know if you remember Calvin Johnson, the wide receiver. His mom was the same
I'll
way.
get you know. All right.
Like,
Where you at?
I guess he really didn't need a manager. The mom is the
That was
manager.
Councilman Knight. He
But
said
that
he's on
should
his way.
kill them.
He was here.
That's all of them guys
So
is
far,
about.
so far, nothing
Yeah.
we
I
can.
know Shaq, yeah, his mom and dad was pretty good.
Yeah.
What's the kids?
We got a bunch of them moms really stepped in and did a good job.
Jordan,
DR 549.
he was getting fined like $1,000 a night. He was wearing the Jordan. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jordan pretty much made Nike.
Yeah,
He did make it.
made it.
I read where he gets 5%.
Yeah.
4 million.
His-
4 million a year.
And LeBron get,
More
it's
than
something
4
like 2
million.
or 3%
Michael
or
Jordan gets
something.
4 million a year just off the shoes alone.
He gets 200 million.
Can you bring my budget book from my office? It's just a big budget book.
But I will be
He getting
there
a lot of,
as soon as that meeting
Yeah.
is.
He gets like 200 million. 5%.
I imagine it would be, but I just wanted to prepare you for that.
he's saying just off the beginning of the year though, not even off the sale, yeah. Guess that's the lifetime contract off the jump, he just get like $5 million.
LeBron
Okay,
should
Mr.
do
Walker,
another level.
we're ready
Yeah,
when
that's
you
it.
are.
Sounds good. Good evening, and thank everyone for your participation and your intuitiveness for our. This is our, I think, second work session, budget work session meeting. I'm so glad to have all of you joining with us. We would like to call this meeting now to order. The time is approximately 4:04 p.m. I will now turn the work session over to our city manager, Mr. Keith Rogers.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. For today's work session, Mr. Hunter is going to go through some expenditure highlights, and we are prepared to answer any questions that council may have. Feel free to ask anytime as he goes through the slides.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. Good afternoon to everybody. The sections of the book that we will be going through today are sections 4 and 5 of the book, which include the general fund and utilities. And so we will start off with general government, which is primarily the general fund, but also includes the Powell Bill Fund and the Stormwater Fund as well, which is a utility, but it's run by the Department of Public Works. The first area that we will talk about has to do with, I guess you could say, the administrative arm of the city, which is the mayor and council, the city clerk, and the city manager. There were a couple of items we wanted to mention. We are continuing the funding that's been in for the past 2 fiscal years for the youth leadership development programs that have been advocated for by council. In the city manager's communications division, we have added $50,000 for a marketing and branding initiative. This is to work with really trying to capture the essence of our community and effectively market it internally and externally in an effort to promote tourism and economic development. This is being done by other communities. There are some models that we're looking at, probably go through an RFQ process to find a company that can work with us in terms of developing content and also in the distribution of that content, both through virtual as well as through more terrestrial means. And then we are also continuing with our downtown incentive program. Last year, we appropriated $595,000 of new money for downtown incentives. This year, we just rounded that up to $600,000. So that money will continue to be appropriated That's new money that will be appropriated in fiscal year 2024.
I have a question.
Yes, yes, Mr. Knight.
How much is, appropriated for the youth leadership development?
The youth leader, it's $50,000.
I assume with the National League of Cities as well. I know they try-
Oh, you're talking about the Youth Leadership Council.
Right, yes.
The Youth Leadership Councils and Human Relations,
Okay, so this-
we'll get to that. If you're okay with it, we can get to that in a second, but I can look that up right now if you'd like.
What's the, youth development?
That was a leadership development program that we developed in partnership with Boys and Girls Club. So that's
Okay.
part of one of the programs that they provide for the city, or that they provide in partnership with the city.
And that was, also we have the Heroes Program.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and then you gonna get me the figure for the youth? For
Yes, I'll get that for you here in just a second.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because when we travel with the National League of City in, I think, North Carolina League, we see, a lot of the youth with the council. And I think we only apply for maybe two, which I think is more than two on the youth council. So I would like to see more youth development leadership there, participating with us. When we look across the state, across the country, we see these conventions, they good development training, leadership training, I think would be beneficial for our youth. And I think more want to participate, but it's not enough money in there to fund for only maybe two people,
Okay,
a staff person for one. I think it's a good thing for us.
yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Harrison and Mr. Joyner.
Ms. Hunter, a couple of questions on 4-2, the line item economic development.
Yes.
There is nothing allocated in the 24 proposed budget. Can you help me, again, this is my first year being on the council, so it could be something that I just don't know.
Yes, sir.
Help me out.
I'll be happy to answer that question. So 10 years ago or 11 years ago, we entered into an incentive agreement with, at that time, Hospira, now Pfizer, with respect to an expansion project that they had, and there was a 10-year agreement that dealt with an incentive that was related to property tax values. That incentive agreement, the last payment was this fiscal year.
Good.
So we made sure with Jeff, we made sure to make sure that we were in the clear. We are in the clear, so we have completed that agreement, and so that's why that expenditure has been removed.
And my other question regarding the 600,000 for downtown incentive,
Yes,
the council several months ago approved whereby somebody makes a major investment downtown, for every $1 million that is invested privately, we could look at contributing 100,000.
that's correct, yes.
Is this a part of the downtown incentive program?
Yes,
or-
it is.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Going back to, establish the 50,000 for marketing and branding. And I think, we have had conversation year after year dealing with that. And I don't know if that's gonna be enough money to do what council have asked staff to actually do. And we had a conversation about, when Nash County, advertised, Nash County, you see a lot of the event center, the sports complex, but no mention of Rocky Mount. And you see those in various magazines across North Carolina, other publications. We need to continue to brand ourselves, to tell our story about Rocky Mount, to gate some of these things that we see on social media about Rocky Mount, and it's not a good place to live, not a safe place to live, when actually we have a lot going on. And we spend a lot branding ourselves with the center of it all, but we need to continue to tell that story and get in front of that. And so $50,000 seems kind of a small amount to actually do what we need to do, especially when we see daily negativity. What we see in our local paper, he's taking a picture, hello. Stuff about crime, and not enough on, the good things that we're doing. So, I just wanna,
I understand, and one of the aspects of this is it will give us an opportunity to look at all of the funds that we are currently spending in marketing in a variety of ways to see how we can best leverage, because this is 50,000 in addition to the funding that we are putting in marketing and advertising in other areas. We can certainly look at it. This was kind of a first guess. You will also see that we've also increased the marketing and advertising budget specifically for the event center. But to your point specifically, we definitely want to make sure that we are effectively branding Rocky Mount, because to your point, that is not something that is happening right now from the standpoint, particularly from an external marketing perspective. And that is something that we need to address and correct. So we're gonna start off with this and then see where we can land from there.
thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Carney,
Yes, sir, Mr. Jordan.
So, I guess we'll get to it. This is inclusive of the summer youth, allocation that we make as well for the summer youth workers.
Yes, sir, that'll be, we can talk about that a little later, but yes, sir, it's in the budget.
Okay, good.
Okay, next is human resources and human relations. There is a request, and it has been discussed in funding 2 new positions in human resources, to continue with their work. We also have established funding in this budget to provide on-site mental health services for employees. This would be done, conceptually on a contracted basis with a mental health provider. This would be in addition to the EAP services that are eligible to our employees through the health plan. But this would provide some additional services that we want to make sure that all of our employees have access to. We also are working on establishing a supervisory training program that will be available to all of our employees in terms of developing current supervisors as well as developing employees to become supervisors. We also, in the human relations area, maintaining our neighborhood grants program. The one difference is we currently had 2 programs. One is a neighborhood, kind of an entryway program for like signage and other markings. That stays in human relations. The facade program, because it's more of a residential program and has been primarily managed by community development, that funding has been moved over to the community development department to make facilitating its administration easier. To go back to the question that Mr. Knight had earlier, currently the funding that we provide in human relations for travel, and it does, as you mentioned, include travel for the Youth Leadership Council, is $14,500. So we can look at that's something that we can look at increasing, possibly to increase participation with the YLC members at NLC. I know they go to state conference, but obviously, I think you're talking specifically about the national
And
conference.
how much, what was the amount you just said?
$14,500. Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
The on-site mental health services, is that a part of the professional services line item?
In human resources,
Yes.
let me look at it real quick. Yes, it is. It is part of that $170,000 for professional services. Yes.
I haven't
Yes.
seen too many requests from department heads about position. And I think in the past, a couple of years ago, I think we asked for a supplemental, is something that department heads ask for when it comes for positions?
I'm trying to go off memory.
For positions within departments. The reason why I'm saying it is to see what positions that departments are asking for, so that we can know to make sure those are in the budget, need to be in the budget.
Yeah, so this budget process, the department heads made their requests to me, and we sat down and went over their entire budget request. So we have plethora of vacancies citywide, so there are very few what I would call newly created positions in the budget. One unique thing this year is because we are updating the compensation plan, council will receive a separate ordinance that has the list of positions and the new structure for the compensation plan. What I would say is, because it's a new plan, you probably don't even want to compare it to a previous one. You just want to take that and review that as a new plan. These new positions within human resources are to address the supervisory training and really help us in our implementation of the new class and comp structure. So more so than just filling I don't want to call it a routine need or just a annual request. These positions will specifically help human resources to administer our new compensation structure. And we really want to make sure that there's an emphasis on the training so people can take advantage of the career ladder. And as we talked about last time, training overall in all facets is something that human resources has been focused on. So that's what these two positions will allow human resources to do specifically.
So we don't have that anymore, do we? Or that's old, that's from the previous, I think under Charles, there's like a department supplemental.
I believe so, yes. We've done some supplementals, but not specifically for staffing. So we can, we've looked at supplementals, we incorporate them in the budget during the review process, but I would not say specific to staffing.
Okay.
Mr. Joyner, I think.
No, I answered my question.
Okay. With respect to finance, just two things we wanted to point out overall in the finance budget. And the finance budget includes, of course, administration of finance. It also includes accounting and purchasing. Obviously, we're still working with the hiring processes for a new director of finance as well as a new accounting supervisor. Two items we did want to point out is that per your approval earlier this year, this is the first year of our new insurance broker contract, which has gone well with respect for our liability and casualty insurance. Our current banking contract will end at the end of fiscal year 24. So we have one more year under our current banking contract. And I do know the finance staff is going to start working, go ahead and working, because we want to make sure we have plenty of time to prepare an appropriate RFP, give you time to evaluate, and then if a change is necessary, provide sufficient time for the switch over from one bank to another. We don't want that to be too short of a period of time because that's a pretty intricate process. But we did want to make you aware that that is something that is coming up in the coming 12 months. As part of our efforts in evaluating the role of the director of finance in terms of what finance directors do today and their focus really on the financial management aspects, we are recommending to establish central services, which is building maintenance and judicial center operation of the judicial center as a separate department in the coming fiscal year. This would allow us to then reorient the director of finance to be focused primarily on financial functions. If you remember 10, 15 years ago, finance director not only oversaw finance operations, but also oversaw building and IT and other things as well. So we are recommending that it be established as a separate department. We have done some significant work in the last couple of years to centralize the management of city facilities, and it's reflected in their budget. That includes trying to centralize and singularize contracts for various services and also functioning of staff. Also, this department manages almost $5.4 million of funded projects that are included in the CIP, various improvements and renovations to city facilities that we're going to go ahead and get started on in the coming fiscal year.
Who would oversee that? I mean, if you said new department, solely new department?
Yeah, so essentially we have, currently all of these functions exist within the finance department. So we are simply separating them out from finance department and are contemplating using existing staff to do that.
Okay, so now who would be existing staff?
The current, I guess, the division, what is the current title?
The current facilities manager.
Current facilities manager, but this will be a brand new department with the existing staff.
Now, who is that?
That would be Michael Bond.
Okay, so he's gonna oversee. Okay,
I just wanna make sure we're clear, this is his current, these are his current duties.
right.
We're just going to a new, separating and segregating it out.
So how many would be in that department? How many is in that department?
Current staffing level is 9, if I'm correct. 9, correct.
It would be, you will oversee it and it'll be, 8 to 9 people working with them. But they'll be doing the same thing they're doing now, it's just separated.
Correct, they'd no longer be part of finance department, they will be a new department, central services, but it's the identical operations.
With reporting to, who would they be reporting to?
We'll hash that out.
Okay.
But all of the department heads report up directly to either the city manager or an assistant city manager.
Okay.
So even that won't be vastly different. And because of the uniqueness of some of the central services, some of those functions are already kind of reporting up to assistant manager, assistant city manager already. So again, this is primarily to segregate out the non-financial duties to really ensure that as we're recruiting for a finance director, that we're presenting as a city a department that is what you would expect for a finance professional. And these duties are currently existing. There's no change in the current duties, but it's separating it out. So it will be a new department, which is why it's presented as such, but utilizing existing staff and existing resources.
Yes, sir.
Now, this city manager, when I look at your chart, it seems sort of, we're gonna have to,
So it's a little uneven.
you know, cause, and I'm just saying, it seems like, under Mr. Daniels, no slap in the face. Seems like it's a lot under his, look at assistant manager would be.
Mhm.
I know you've been carrying the weight, the load for a long time, been doing a great job. But need a break or something, because it seems like it's just a lot of stuff under that department. That's just to me.
Sure.
I was gonna mention that to you, but since we're talking about it, and you probably, when you, after these budget meetings, look at that again, but it seems a little, like my mother said, lopsided, uneven.
Absolutely, and with the number of vacancies that we have, you mentioned the assistant city manager, but several vacancies, we will recalibrate as can, but the most important thing for me and for what I feel for the city is to make sure that we get the right people in these roles. So we wanna go ahead and do things at a deliberate pace, but not rush. So we will be evaluating that, but no particular update in terms of that calibration. But like you said, Mr. Daniels has been here for quite a while and has broad shoulders, so we will support him and we have confidence.
We gotta make sure we take care of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Next, going to police and fire. Last year, as part of the budget, you appropriated $100,000 in the mayor and council's budget as an attempt to provide us with resources to address challenges we were having with violent crime. And the police department has been applying those funds in a variety of ways, and we have now shifted those funds over to the police department. This ties into providing crisis support services to the families of victims, also providing emergency aid when the situations warrant, as well as additional services to officers in their times of need. There's, of course, other things that we have been able to do at no expense directly to the city, such as the embed program that we now have to be able to respond effectively to mental health calls. more effectively than, with trained clinicians. That's been a major improvement that we've been able to get started here in the last couple of months. You will also note in their budgets, that we have increased training for staff development. That is, of course, not only with respect to senior staff, but also with a lot of the newer staff that we have in both departments and making sure that they're up to speed, especially with their continuing education. From a CIP perspective, were a couple of items in the police budget, about $550,000. And then there was also within the fire department, just under $1.7 million. And the main item there was another piece of replacement apparatus. Yes, sir, Mr. Walker.
I had a question. I know, I see, increased training for staff. That is fire and police department, correct?
That's correct.
So say we do send a firefighter and a cop off to training. We send them to a pretty expensive training. Do we have anything in the contract where they can't just like, say, get that training you add to your resumes, like you gotta stay around a certain amount of time? That makes sense.
What I will say in my conversations with other jurisdictions, and obviously I cannot speak for the chief, so I'm not gonna try to speak for the chief. It is very difficult in jurisdictions to be able to facilitate what you are suggesting. There have been times in our history when we have provided, when we have had our own police academies and such, where we have had clauses in the contracts where if they choose to leave prior to a certain period of time, we have to recoup that. Other jurisdictions do that. However, at the same time, then those individuals are then recruited by other agencies that provide signing bonuses that more than offset that buyout. This is one of the challenges that we are having with respect to providing, with respect to staffing, particularly in the public safety area. It's also in other areas as well. It's also true in public safety, and that's what I've learned talking with people from other jurisdictions.
And what I would add to that is, typically in terms of clawbacks, you usually will see those, well, number one, they are difficult, but usually you see those for organizations that provide educational benefits like tuition reimbursement that can make you a better person, not just simply a better firefighter or police officer. Or some localities do things like workforce housing or down payment assistance, and sometimes there's stipulations on that. But with training, it's a little more difficult. What I say is training also will cut the other way. The fact that we invest in training makes us a better department to work for, and you balance going to a department that, yes, you could get a promotion, but the opportunities for training are less. So we do have, I mention it because when it comes to tuition reimbursement and programs like that, we are working with HR as we're evaluating class and compensation to make sure that we're not essentially paying someone to get a degree and as soon as they graduate, they're out the door and we paid for the degree. But training is a bit different. We think that just makes us a robust and assists in our marketing on that front.
Yes, sir.
Just a general question, how is the chief doing in adding police officers to our staff?
I just approved one officer today, that was a lateral. So I don't know the exact numbers, but we had a pretty decent class of recruits that we were able to bring in following the announcement of the additional salary. And so we'll have an update probably maybe next month about where we see the staffing and what impact that we've had. But it's budget season, so a lot of other departments are making those adjustments. So I think maybe a year from now, we'll really see the fruits of what our efforts have been. But I can say so far, we have seen a number of, I've signed off on a number of people to join the department since the announcement.
Next is going with public works, surface transportation, and stormwater. Again, we are making investments to focus on staff training and development across all areas within these organizations, with a real focus on enabling our employees to take advantage of the improvements we've made to career ladder programs. in Public Works, which also includes, the stormwater field. We are also continuing our acquisitions and maintenance of light-duty vehicles through Enterprise Fleet Management. So far, we have signed, orders for 140 vehicles. We will not sign as many orders next year, and we are moving forward with that, and that is going along well. This department alone manages close to $10 million in CIP projects, which includes Public Works. Of that 5.3 million, over 4 million of that is for the purchase of heavy equipment, including trash, garbage trucks, street equipment, those type of items. 2.827 for surface transportation, and then 1.66 million for stormwater. Yes, sir.
And looking at, keeping in line with other areas, Public Works salary process is like 10% lower than our surrounding areas and other areas. Is there any opportunity for us to get Public Works at a level to, I mean, that is probably, if you're not picking up our waste and keeping our streets clean, it is a real safety hazard. And so, have we looked at Public Works in any regional form as well?
I can answer that question. I had mentioned today that, and I spoke with, one of the council members going up. I've been having during this whole budget session, I've been thinking and just praying about salaries increase that we've done, which I appreciate. We've done that with our police department and our fire department, and I mentioned it to the city manager. I've been here going on almost 20 years. And since I've been here, I'm glad you brought us up to this discussion. The Public Works Department has had the hardest time in career ladder movement when it comes to pay raises, increases, and managers, last 3, now 4, have continued to promise that we're gonna do better as a city. And when we look at this department, we do some of the most important work here in the city. They pick up our trash, in our ditches, they fill up the potholes. I think it's about right, while we in a budget session, that we at least give this department nothing no less than a 10% increase across the board. One of the citizens stated in the public comment, sanitation workers would stop collecting the trash. It would be a public health issue. They've done that through the pandemic. Several of them have come over the years and asked us in a kind way, in a respectful way. And we just keep, again, having meetings with staff, department heads, city managers, and it seems like they just can't move any further. So I just think that this council should really consider and ask our city manager and Mr. Hunter to see what the budget impact would be if we give them nothing no less than 10%. And then I did a little research here. Greensboro is 5% lower, 10% lower than Charlotte, 13% lower than Raleigh, 9% lower than Durham. We made a bold move with our police department. No problem with it. But I think that these men and women who are on the ground in the trenches working really deserve not wait for the pay comp study. And if something changes there, then give them that too. I think they really deserve it. We see them every day, at least I do, doing the work that some people wouldn't do, but they're doing it in a dignified and respectable way. So I know we are going over the budget, and you're right, Councilman Joyner. We should really be on the cutting edge and take care of that department. Really should. So I'm just asking that we consider that and ask our city manager to come back with us with some numbers and let us talk about it.
I do know that, salaries and wages are up not quite $700,000. So it would be helpful to know how that 700,000 comes into play in, wages, but, the comp plan is certainly important. These associates of ours are valuable employees, like all of them. But $700,000 increase, I don't know what the across the board increase that is, but, it needs a little bit more further review. But, I got just two questions.
Can are they related to the salary piece?
That's
Do you
right.
mind if I just
Oh,
address that?
I'm sorry,
Wait,
yes,
no,
sir.
no. I just wanted to address, number one, every time salary conversation comes up, I feel it appropriate for me to reiterate that you will not find a bigger advocate for any employee of this city than me. And I know that that sentiment is shared amongst the executive team. I can't speak to the full history and everything that has gone on, but I can tell you my commitment and philosophy and what I have observed thus far. What we discussed previously, as well as at the last budget work session, it is imperative for us to move forward with the classification and compensation structure as has been presented. We will never be able to get to a place where we can ensure that we are on the cutting edge or coming close to it without implementing and adopting this new structure. In order to implement this new structure successfully, it does not allow for across the board increases this year. Additionally, to single out one department for an across the board increase, as the manager, I couldn't, as much as I love Public Works, and I have a particular affinity for Public Works because I was a Public Works employee, but I can't, as the manager, sit in this seat and single out a department in that way. And I know that the police department felt like it was singled out, but as I mentioned before, that was as much as a recruitment tool as it was a commitment to the dedication. All 1,000 of our employees are important. So I can't compare one and say one is more than the other. What I can say is, to your point also, Mr. Harris, many of our public works employees, or let me take a step back. With the implementation of the new compensation plan, about 50% of the workforce will see an increase simply because of the implementation of that plan. On top of that, all employees are continue to be eligible for their merit-based increase that they will receive in fiscal year 24. My request to the council is to respond to the comments about public works. We look forward to council approving the funding in the budget for the comp plan. We look forward to council adopting the new comp plan. Allow us to implement the new comp plan and come back with recommendations for where we can make additional adjustments. We have presented it in that fashion strategically so that we can ensure that we do our best by all employees. Our market analysis that was part of the comp plan does not suggest we are 10% behind in regards to our public works. So I'm not trying to dispute data points, but that is, a market analysis was done for the classification and compensation study. So if we are saying that we are behind certain jurisdictions and localities, that's gonna happen. It's budget season. So as soon as we raise a salary here, someone else is gonna raise theirs. And so that's just the nature of the business that we're in. But my request to the council and the information that has been presented is to allow us to implement this brand new structure. This is a brand new structure. So while we appreciate the history, we have a new opportunity before us. If council will allow us to will approve the new structure and allow us to implement that structure and come back, then I think that we would have a more meaningful conversation at that time. In addition to that, I think that in our commitment to this new structure, built into that is a continual review of positions by class and by category. So if there is a particular group of employees that is we find is lacking behind the market, the new structure allows us to make those changes and address those inadequacies without disrupting the entire position. Without disrupting the entire classification structure. So that is why we have made the recommendations that we have made. I am hopeful that council is amenable to allowing us to do that. And I'm saying all of that without even speaking to what the resource need would be. But a 10% across the board increase would be upwards of $1 million for public works. And that's just doing some mental math, so don't quote me on that. But anecdotally, that is the neighborhood that we're looking at. And we are already investing about $3.5 million citywide to implement this new compensation structure. So that's again why my request and the way that this is presented, we're asking for council's approval of this new plan, approval of the budget, leaving the funding for these increases intact, and allow us to implement and evaluate and bring council a report, which will include recommendations for additional adjustments. So I'm hoping that's amenable to the council.
It's,
Well noted, your comments are well noted, thank you.
I hear you, but it's not amenable to me. And I'm doing this as respectful as I can. Because if you would have brought that to us a month ago, when we decided to do the 36% increase to the police department, I would be amenable to it. You just said it's a recruitment tool. What I'm saying, historically, not just here in Rocky Mount, public works have always been at the bottom. And what I'm saying, and I commend you for making a bold move, I'm asking this council to make a bold move in our employees. You know, we didn't wait for the comp studies for the police department or the fire department, and they came in numbers. These guys and these women deserve at least a 10% because of how they've been treated, because of the work that they do. If it costs $1 million, I think we should pay it. And I don't have a respectable person, and I'm not singling you out, Mr. Manager, but when we decided to hire the city manager, your salary was below what we paid our city manager. We gave a $75,000 increase to your salary. I don't have a problem with it. Work for it, enjoy it. What I'm saying, why we always have to wait for those men and women who who sometimes had to dump urine, feces, rotten food, whatever, dead dogs, cat, whatever people put in their trash can. When the grass not cut, when the ditches are not cut. Get in there with rubber boots and moccasins. Work in the heat of the day. I'm asking the council if we could really consider giving these men and women, and I'm singling them out because they have been singled out down through the years. You just mentioned it. And I'm not trying to grandstand, but what I'm saying, we made a bold move. Let's make another one because they deserve it. They really deserve it. And if they stop picking up trash and stop doing the kind of things that they do that people don't want to do, what are we gonna do? You know, they're just tired of it. They're really fed up. They're tired of it. I'm tired of, I'm not talking about you, previous administration have come to this council and asked us to wait for a comp study, a pay study, and these guys don't get it. These women don't get it. They tell us in the grocery stores, when they're picking your trash, they don't get it. It sounds good, but it's not reality. And so if we are the ones that decide upon this budget and what goes in this budget and give our city manager the authority to execute the budget, I'm asking us to give him the authority to do what's right. And that's all I have to say about that. But it's really, I think we really should. And we didn't open that door. That door was opened up a few months ago. And all I'm just saying, for the department, Public Works, which includes sanitation, they have been asking, and they have met with some other council members who have gone and heard those, and have heard the stories, that this is our opportunity to do it. And I hope we would do it. I hope we would do it right. And I just wanna know what the impact would be, how much it would cost, if we do it or not. But I pray we will do it. I pray that we have 4 council members that are bold enough and that who care enough to do what's right. And that's all I can ask. And I appreciate what you said, city manager, but it's something that's been heavy on my heart the last month or so. How are we going to make something wrong right? Thank you.
Have all the department heads been given information on the upcoming comp plan?
Yes. However, I want to try to make sure that I speak as clearly as possible because again, having a meeting like this, sometimes these conversations have the impact of doing a disservice to our workforce. So that's why I also try to be mindful of our line of questioning and considerations because sometimes we can create a problem that may or may not exist. And again, I want to be mindful that we've got multiple departments to look after. And so it'll never be my intention during a meeting to have a balance between pitting one employee versus another. Department heads have been included in what the recommendations of the comp plan have been. Because it is subject to council approval, we have not communicated specific impacts on individual employees to department heads because the impacts are individualized. And so that is the other piece to kind of the philosophical conversation about salaries. People working shoulder to shoulder may have different salaries today, and once the comp plan is approved, we'll have different salaries tomorrow. And so we want to make sure that those we don't overgeneralize in areas to get us in trouble or unfairly set expectations. So yes, they have been communicated, but specific increases or changes on specific employees, that will not be communicated until the new plan is adopted.
Right. That's what I wanna hear. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So Councilmember Harris, going on what you always would say, that, you knew at this, you new council member. And I appreciate your questioning, like this. But when you use the word pit, not you.
Use the word what?
When the city manager used the word pitting one department against another. And you always talk about transparency. When we ask these questions, I don't consider that be pitting one department against the other. We're asking questions that's a concern, and then it has to do with numbers in the budget. So I appreciate it if we wouldn't say we are pitting departments against each other. Because surely we can say we pitted the department, the fire department, the linemen against other departments. And I realize those departments are important. They are. I'm not dispelling that. Only thing I'm just trying to put across today that this department, Public Works, have historically have not been giving what they should have had. And the men and the women in this department deserve to get a 10% or more if we choose to in their salaries. That's all I'm saying. But I don't like, we're pitting one against that. That means we dividing our workforce. And I don't see that. But I just hope we can consider that. Thank you.
Get on to a couple questions. There's a new term, reserve budget -EFM.
That is the funding that is set aside for the enterprise fleet management
Okay.
operations.
I knew there
to
was
pay the leases, the management agreements and all of that.
Thank you.
That's basically the allowance, and it's equivalent to what we have spent in past years for the direct purchase of light-duty vehicles in the general fund, both for general purpose departments and for the police department.
I appreciate it. I just couldn't think of what the EFM stood for. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Daughtridge on several occasions, as well as I, have mentioned if we could put more dollars into road surfacing. I know there's $4 million remaining, I believe, of unallocated ARP funds. If we approve the $1 million that the manager has proposed to be used for major plans, studies. But Councilman Daughtridge and I would like to see additional monies allocated for resurfacing. I think that's one thing the citizens in Rocky Mount can see what we're doing to help them is doing more road servicing, filling potholes, et cetera. So I would just like to put that out today for discussion.
And we gotta remember who's filling the pothole.
If I could speak to that, what I would ask in regards to paving is if you will allow us to come up with a communication tool to allow residents to know which streets are maintained by the city versus state control.
Yeah.
I think that would help
Oh, sure, yes,
a
sir.
bit, and then allow us to bring a proposal about how we can gradually increase our paving efforts, because the staff does have a system by which they evaluate. So I want to make sure I understand from the citizen's perspective, I really don't care who maintains it, but I want it maintained. But I think it would be fruitful for us to make sure that we can leverage and maximize funding to make sure that we have everything in front of us when we make that decision. So that's something that I think that we could do fairly quickly and come back. And if you're referring to the remaining ARP funds, that's an appropriation that could be made at any time.
By all means, sure. But there are some streets and cul-de-sacs throughout the city that citizens know that's not DOT responsibility. So, but any information that we can put forward to the citizens.
Sure.
On our website, et cetera, would greatly enhance what we are trying to do.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm hoping that many of those streets and cul-de-sacs are on our upcoming paving resurfacing list.
And so thank you for that, because I'm equally concerned about the roads. But I'm equally concerned that the people own the house that the road in front of. You know, I can handle a pothole a little longer if I can own the home. And for my area, yeah, I got potholes, but my biggest issue is home ownership. And so looking at how we use the ARP fund to increase the opportunities for home ownership as inclusive of roads. But my first priority would be, how do we get home ownership in there?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one more
Yeah.
question? Oh.
Okay. So just make sure. Okay, next is Parks and Recreation. We will continue funding for our existing programs and activities, including several community events, as well as our continued partnerships with Boys and Girls Club and other organizations. And those are itemized in the budget with respect to the various organizations that we provide support and various activities and events that we provide support with throughout the course of the year. There is money, and this is part of the CIP, but we pointed out separately, and that is the revision of our Parks Master Plan. This is, of course, to put us in the best position possible to secure major grant funding for major park improvements. This is something that we have to do in order to be in a position to be able to secure that funding. We're continuing with the replacement of various pieces of maintenance equipment, primarily mowers, but also tractors, as well as small implements. And the department itself is directly managing over $1.7 million in CIP projects, which include refurbishing of playground equipment, park renovations, and other activities that they will be doing over the course of the next fiscal year. With respect to development services and community development, last meeting, we had a brief discussion about our development fee structure. Our staff, which is primarily in development services, but there's also some staff in the engineering side of public works, are reviewing those fee structures, and there is a plan to present to council an updated structure that will align them more with the cost for providing these services. They will remain competitive. These fee structures have not been changed in over a decade. So it is definitely time for us to consider making revisions and updates in a fair and appropriate fashion. Yes.
It's not been balanced.
Right, and this budget is not balanced with any intention of a fee increase. So this budget is built based on current fee structures. And at the same time, as was also mentioned, our staff will continue to work upon improving the services that we provide to our builders, residents, and businesses with respect to those services. I'm gonna have to use them here very soon because I have to replace my AC. So that's definitely something that we'll be working with. We are continuing the city's commitment to affordable housing. $1.2 million that we had appropriated last year. We're adding an additional $1.2 million for the various affordable housing programs that we have. And we are also increasing the funding for our construction trades program up to $100,000. So that will be an increase that we are proposing as well. This is meant to enable us to be able to train residents to take on the jobs that are available in construction, both in residential, commercial, and industrial construction, that are critical to our economy and critical to our growth and redevelopment.
Regarding this, a couple of questions, and I'm glad to see a possible increases in fees or under study. Do we compare ourselves to neighboring cities? I'm a contractor and I order a building inspector for electrical.
Yes.
And it might take 2 days or 3 days. However, do we look at other cities and see how quickly they respond to similar requests? Are we compatible with other cities?
Yes, we are. We've done that internally. I know there was a study that was recently done by the North Carolina League of Municipalities that was looking at that, and we performed well with that. That is also an element, I believe, of the North Carolina benchmarking project that we will be a part of in this coming year. So that is something that we do.
Well, as we make the announcement of any increase, if there's any, let's make sure that we kind of put a message that, our service levels is comparable to others.
Yes, sir.
I think it'll be a good point to make.
With respect to the Rocky Mount Event Center, I want to first of all say that there is an error on the page of the budget for that, and that the numbers are counted twice.
Okay.
That's why you may have been looking at it. That was a problem with the software that we were using. It doubled up those numbers. I do have replacement pages available, and they have already been updated. They were updated this afternoon on the budget. So these are the correct numbers. Just want to make clear.
Okay.
And this is the only case where this happened. I did check the entire budget. This is the only case where it happened. As you can see, our operating revenues, we anticipate an increase of close to 20% in operating revenues in fiscal year 24 compared to what we had adopted for fiscal year 23. When we went through the revenue sheet, that is, of course, with respect to events, it's also parking and sponsorships. With respect to operating expenditures, there is a minor increase. Obviously, that can be tied in part to increased activity, so that is to be expected. But the key thing is, in that operating subsidy, we've been able to reduce that down to just over $620,000. So it's a reduction of over $237,000 reduction in that operating subsidy. We are still on pace to be able to be on track that by the end of fiscal year 2026, that we will be in a positive operating position with respect to operating costs. This is not inclusive of debt service. There are some other items that are not part of operations that deal with the tax credit. I believe those tax credits expire in 2025, so all of those various revenues and expenditures go away as well. But with respect to the direct operations of the event center, we are moving in the we continue to move in the right direction. Activity continues to pick up, and we feel confident that we'll be able to meet the goal that we have communicated to council over the last couple of years.
You gonna give us those revised sheets today? Or?
Yes, I can give them, I can. So I've already double-sided them, so it's page 458 is the revised page, but 457 is from the previous budget, so you can just pop them in your book.
Okay. But, have you got more to pass out? Or?
Yes, sir, I do. Just one page.
Just one page.
Oh, it's just one page.
It's two-sided. It's two-sided. I'm sorry.
I'm
It's
sorry.
two-sided.
Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
It's two-sided. Sorry about that.
Tell them we're looking for more people.
Pass around, Ray.
We conclude our discussion of general government with planning for the future. As we've discussed, the manager's proposed budget does recommend using $1 million from ARPA funds for a variety of important strategic planning efforts. We've had a lot of discussion about the need for a revised comprehensive land use plan. There is a need for a downtown development plan as well as for a comprehensive housing plan. and we believe that $1 million will cover the cost of those three initiatives. You also will note that in that section with respect that's called non-departmental, we are continuing to do our best to make sure that our debt service remains at a sustainable and affordable level. We feel that we are in that position for the next fiscal year and will continue to do so. Even though we do have some significant projects coming up of necessity, we are committed to doing our best to maintain a sustainable debt service load, so that we have funding also available in the budget for other programs, initiatives, and improvements.
It's kind of steep for those plans. Have they been, we just allocate, we don't know exactly what they're gonna cost.
That is correct.
That is correct, but I can say that, because of the age of our comprehensive plan for a locality of our size, localities have spent almost $500,000 just for a comprehensive plan. That's a significant undertaking, not to say that we will, but that's a significant undertaking, and for a comparable city our size, that would not be out of the realm of possibility. The downtown master plan, we may be able to receive some economies of scale from doing them at the same time, which is why we wanted to put those out together. And in regards to the housing plan, it really will be dependent on all of what would go into it. I know that there are existing plans that we will be able to incorporate into a new plan, so that may reduce costs there. But this was a safe estimate to be able to have the larger, the higher end number in front of council so that we can move forward and not have to reduce what we want to have as a desired outcome for these initiatives.
I had gotten some calls on it about we're spending $1 million, so I don't know if any other council members got any feedback. I hope they're listening too.
And the other thing I always like to reiterate around budget time is, a lot of the things that we talk about are things that put us in our ongoing obligations. But this is a great example of one-time money being used on non-recurring expenses. So that's also, why we felt comfortable with this allocation.
I guess
Sorry, go ahead.
I guess with this process of being very inclusive with community would be a portion of what that cost would be.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
That making sure that you have the engagement portion of it does contribute to the cost.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to take into consideration.
Yeah.
And engagement is a significant component for these types of efforts, which also led to this recommendation as well, understanding that by virtue of what these plans require engagement, but of course that contributes to the high price tag.
Yeah. We finished a couple that wasn't inclusive on.
Okay.
And so,
My question here, are there companies, consultants, whoever do these plans, are we gonna look at those that are specialized in communities of our size or our location, North Carolina or Southeast? How you even go about looking at choosing the right one if they only look at Charlottes and Raleighs and Greensboros instead of cities of our size?
Well, I would say I've in my experience, the consulting firms that do this, they do this for a wide range of communities. So it would be a RFP that we would put out, and so it would be what response we get back. But I've got confidence that we will get people that have nationwide experience in communities that compare to us in a plethora of different ways.
Okay.
Land use planning is a specific trade that generates experts in the field that come and do these types of work. And that also is directly relates not only to the comp plan, but the downtown master plan as well.
I guess my hope would be, thank you for making it extensive, but I've often talked about when we look at these, the comprehensive housing plans, other plans, that we also look at the journey that got us to where we are. And then as we look at going forward, that we would be inclusive in both things of how do we do that in a way that we do not be unconscious of our past.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then another critical component in addition to the consultant is ensuring that we have staff to manage these initiatives as well. And as you can imagine, the staff that we have here is more familiar with the community than the consultant will be. So we are focused on both, ensuring that we have adequate staff to manage the consultants and these initiatives as well. So that's an important component to it also.
Thank you.
So that concludes general government. Now we will get, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir, Mr. Harris.
Well, after central services, I had Department of Technology
Yes,
and Department of Business and Collections.
yes.
I didn't have any questions, but did you cover that up there or not?
No, we did not cover it there. We're pretty much remaining consistent with our operations in both departments.
Okay, well, I just.
And there are some investments that are being made from a technology standpoint and from a business collection standpoint. There was the email that you received with respect to the improvement in our collection rate, but overall, both of those operations are functioning very well and we're remaining consistent in those operations.
But I just for maybe other councils, just wanted to bring that up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. With respect to the utilities, and this will cover energy resources and water resources. In the area of energy resources, we want to reaffirm that there are no planned base rate increases in the coming year for either electric or gas, as well as no staffing increases. You will note in the budgets that one of the challenges we are seeing is with replacement of equipment due to, and there is funding that has been added to address inflationary challenges, both on an as needed, both in a line item basis, but also in a reserve, to make sure that we have funding when transformers go out, when other pieces of equipment go out, both in electric and gas operations. It's not just a matter of the cost, it can also be a matter of the lead time to get them. So we are working also with respect to some of our policies on inventory to look at addressing those matters. Overall, the CIP calls for nearly $8.6 million in projects, 7.2 of that in electric and about 1.4 million in gas. Involved, and a lot of that in the electric side involves continued improvements in our distribution system that we will be making this coming fiscal year. On the water resources side, we of course, our proposed budget does make the recommendations that were part of our cost of service analysis that we presented in the fall of last year, which includes a 7.5% rate increase in water and an 8.5% rate increase for sewer. For our average residential customer, that should be an impact of around $3 per month. There are no staffing increases in water resources. Along with capital needs, we also are having to increase funding primarily in the area of those elements of the treatment process, and that is due to the fluctuating and rising price of commodities. That's really kind of something that we try to deal with. And our staff does a very good job of trying to be as efficient and effective as possible in the use of use of those materials and finding the most efficient and effective means to address any challenges that come up. Obviously, water and wastewater treatments are highly regulated industries that our staff does a very good job of responding to. Total CIP in this area is around 8.7 million. About 5.7 million of that's tied to water and just under 3 million of that is for sewer.
We are still, will remain able to supply Kingsborough and other places.
That is correct. And just for the sake of knowledge, we work hand in hand, obviously, with our economic development partners to make sure that when opportunities present themselves, that we are fully aware of what the requirements are, and also how to develop the partnerships. We obviously have the state, you have the Golden Leaf Foundation, like their assistance with the Peel Road site. There are resources that we have access to in those opportunities that we use to facilitate the necessary services. We are in a favorable position in that we have the capacity to be able to take on additional residential customers as well as additional industrial customers. And I did not do that.
My car.
So there are two other items left in our review schedule. The first is the public hearing, which will be scheduled for your city council meeting on Monday, June the 12th, starting at 7 p.m. Our adoption of the budget ordinance is still scheduled for Monday, June 26th at 4 p.m. And as I said before, the revised budget document to include the page that I had to change is available now on the website. So if you view it now, you will see it. It's in its correct form as proposed. And that is our presentation for this evening.
Thank you.
Public hearing,
Yes,
is that June
June 12th, yes.
June 12th, okay.
and we adopted on the 29th.
26.
26th, yes.
And if we have need any other thing, we can call city manager.
Yes.
Thank you.
A general question I have, if you don't mind,
Yes, sir.
it's kinda, I've raised it in Durham. You know, we got some major projects this coming year, CIP. Booker T. Washington, fire station, facility improvements, et cetera, et cetera. If a project comes underneath proposed budget, where does the excess money go? And is council made aware? And then if a project exceeds the allocation, do y'all come back to the council to ask where to make up that money? I just need a better understanding of the mechanics of these major projects. And as I indicated in Durham, a status report, quarterly or semi-annually, just would help me feel better about these major projects and whether or not we're on board, you know?
Yes, sir. And first of all, we do plan on establishing a status report. That is definitely something that we will do. To answer your questions with respect to these major projects, most of these projects are financed projects that require us to secure financing for them. In a couple of these projects, such as Fire Station 2 and some of the others, those are design and build projects where we will secure financing based on the guaranteed maximum price. So that money, our financing will align with that. And obviously, if it does come out less than that, then we will, as statutories allow us to do with those type of proceeds, we'll use that to either reinvest and have available as an idle fund or to use to other projects, and that'll be up to the discretion of council. If projects come over budget, then it is our responsibility, as it always has, to make you aware of that. That's where the change orders and all of that comes in. We do our best to try to find money in the existing budget to cover those costs so that we're not increasing the total budget. We're trying to find ways that we can make it move. But in those circumstances where we see a cost increase that we do have to cover with an additional appropriation, you would approve that as well. So we are very aware and cognizant of the fact that obviously there is what the bid says. I mean, there's the contract that's approved. We establish contingencies in those approved agreements. That's what we appropriate when we appropriate for those projects. We do our absolute best to bring in projects under budget, and to make the net funding available for other purposes or for investment. In those situations where sometimes it does go over, we then make the necessary adjustments and bring them to your attention in order to be able to accommodate what needs to be done.
So if something was financed for 8 million and the cost comes in at 7.5, are you saying the 500,000, which is finance, would not be used for operating expenses in other departments? It will be used to acquire other equipment or other things that were intended to be financed?
That is correct, because there are certain guidelines we
Right.
have to follow with respect to the financing. We cannot take money that we borrow
Right.
and use it for operating. That's not, I mean, that's local,
Right.
that's local government. There may be ways you can invest it, but then again, you gotta be very careful
Right.
with that too. But we do not take money that we borrow and then turn it around and pay for
Right.
operations.
If it comes out, the cost exceeds budget, you gotta make transfers if you can.
That's correct.
Is the council made aware that transfer from this department over to this department, or how is that handled?
Usually in those
internally?
cases, we make you aware of that, yes. Sometimes we also have to come for an amendment appropriation from
sure.
fund balance, and you certainly know that, but we also make you
Yeah.
aware of transfers. And again, you also approve the change orders that have to be made when those situations occur, because no contractor's just allowed to just go out there and do it and then say, oh yeah, by the way, it's 5% more than what we told you. We have to get a change order for that, and there better be a very good reason for it too.
Right.
So those safeguards are in place. The procurement policies we have here as a city, as well as state purchasing law, are very good at protecting us with respect to those projects. Mr. Knight, I believe you had a question.
So we already secured the money for the fire station too?
We have not secured the money for that at this point, because we have not finalized design. We will finalize design here probably in the next 30, 60 days. Our intention will be to secure financing between now and October, and the end of October, which is about the time when construction will come along. So we are working on that timeline. But again, the reason we haven't secured financing is the LGC doesn't allow you until you're to at least a certain part in the design phase, so that you can confirm price, so that you're not, in their mind, borrowing more than you need. And so we're working through that
So
now.
why is it taking that so long? Cause we've been talking about it since our previous city manager. For us, the design, we already hired the,
Correct. I believe a lot of it, some of it had to do with COVID issues in terms of their capacities to be able to handle design. I also know that there were some changes that were made in terms of incorporating some community space in that fire station, so there were some aspects of that were changed. And now we are doing our best to stay on schedule to provide the design for review this summer and for final approval this summer, so that we can move forward with construction as quickly as possible.
and we would see those designs? 'Cause,
No, sir, not yet.
I mean, once you get them.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
And the information, I asked you and city manager, would I be able to get that before, public hearing?
In terms of the cost for
Yes.
10%,
Yes.
my mental math, I would say between 700,000 and $1 million would be required.
Thank you. You're good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks for today.
Good. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
All right.
Sorry, I'm not trying to.
Got the gavel over here.
Hey, listen, appreciate it. Thank you so much, Ken and, city manager, Keith, which we did, you and the staff for the diligent work. And we look forward to our next meeting, which is, June 12th, with public hearing at 7 and, June 26th, meeting at 4 p.m. The adoption of the budget and our council meeting at the end of the month. Thank you again. Thank you to all in the public that have tuned in with us as we continue to look at our fiscal year financial responsibilities for 2023. Have a great one, and we'll see you all still. This meeting is adjourned.
get together, I'm good.
Hey, gotta go to this board meeting.